This episode is supported by the Women's Health Clinic. At the Women's Health Clinic, you'll be seen by our accredited menopause specialists working to the latest international clinical guidance. We believe that knowledge is power. When you understand what is changing in your body and why, you can make decisions with clarity and confidence and feel back in control of your health. We really take the time to listen to your symptoms using evidence-based assessment and testing where appropriate, and explain what's happening in a way that actually makes sense. From there, we support women to explore all effective treatment options, including prescriptions when needed. Our aim is simple: to optimise women's healthcare wherever you are. No fannying around. Find out more at thewomenshealthclinic.eu.
Welcome back, Fanniers. How are you? It's the end of season 1 of Fannying Around. Hurrah! How did we get here? Well, when Katie and I first sat down over a glass of wine one windy December evening close to the smoker's corner in conversation with a drunken lady, Fannying Around was born, and we thought we'd be talking about hormones, hot flushes and HRT, and we have. But we've also talked a lot about relationships, body image, burnout, fertility, dating, confidence, healthcare, strength, identity, parenting, menopause husbands, and of course, the fanny magnet. If you know, you know. So, over the last 8 episodes, we've had some incredible guests share their stories with honesty, humour and more than a few moments that have both made us laugh and cry. So for this final episode of season 1, we're opening the Fanny Files. Yeah, we're looking back at the biggest themes that kept cropping up again and again. Why so many women struggle to access good information. Why we're also bloody tired. Why so many of us ignore our bodies until they start shouting. Why women still have to fight to be heard. And how menopause somehow became a marketing opportunity for every supplement on the planet. Most importantly, we're asking what we've learnt from the women and men who have joined us this season, and whether actually any of us are any wiser. I'm sure we are. So, grab a cuppa, pour a glass of wine, it's 6 o'clock somewhere, put your feet up and join us as we open the Fanny Files. Hi, mate.
I don't know why I just froze then.
Katie came on the call and she was upside down.
It's because I was trying to represent how I felt.
And when you first come online on our online studio, it sort of screen grabs you as you first appear. Can you see that?
Still upside down?
You're still upside down, which is very exciting. Oh, sorry, I'm not flashing you. God, really.
That's to be a fine day.
Woo! We were just saying it's been one of those days, weeks, years. Can we extend it to?
Oh, years. 2026 has been a real pain in my butt, actually.
Yes. Let's say the first half has been challenging. But we're actually celebrating today, aren't we? Well,
we are.
We're at the end of series, depending on where you're listening and what you say. 1 of Fannying Around.
Season 1. Who would have thought, Rosie, that this went from a chat over a glass of wine on a windy evening, and now we are at the end of season 1, which is super exciting. And I'm always, do you know what blows me away is how many people listen to it and how many people are, listening far and wide. And actually, it's not just my patients. Sometimes I speak to people, that are calling about, not like the gas man, but like people that are calling about a potential appointment, and they reference the podcast. So yeah, it's great. Yeah, all the time.
I was actually thinking of that moment when we kind of stumbled upon this idea, and it was Christmas time, and we were sat outside of a bar near where we live. But there was one lady that came out who was a smoker, who came outside where we were sitting and had had a few refreshing beverages and just sat talking life with us for a while, didn't she? And like I say, she'd had a few refreshing beverages. Good on her. It was Christmas,
It was,
and
wasn't it?
we had
Week before
we
Christmas.
had a good old laugh with her. So we thought we could get more, not drunken ladies, but we could get more ladies talking to us. And actually, that relates really well to what you do and what the podcast is about: sharing stories, sharing information, sharing experiences, and making anyone that feels that's listening to this feel a little less alone. So that's how it was born, from not so much us a drunken night, but thank you to that lady
Absolutely.
who's probably still sat there having an Aperol or two. You know, who knows? So what I thought we'd do is a bit of a roundup, Ep.
Yeah, love it.
Go through some of the tremendous people we've had on series 1, and just some of the key themes or surprising sort of things that have come out of series 1, and probably put a bit of a personal spin on it in terms of what surprised me and what probably didn't surprise you, because you hear this every day. So I've put them as the Fanny Files. They're case files. So if you can imagine, we're a bit like Mulder and Scully. So case file 1, I think I've called the Great Information Heist. And I think what's been really one of the, I think, tick a box on every episode has been information or lack of it.
Every single episode. And I think that, I know that from my patients I see day in, day out. But I think that even I had underestimated how much that lack of information impacts the decisions that people make and have made. And that just was the most recurrent theme. That's what everyone said. Oh, but I didn't know. And or even when we look at Katie, for example, like, I don't know, like, I've got no idea. And that was just so apparent that not only is there a lack of information, it's a bloody great big black hole.
And I think 3 people that stood out to me were Taz, episode 1, where she had to fight for answers, didn't she? And she, from being a young lady, she blamed herself. She didn't know there was even a problem. She didn't even know there was a question to answer. She automatically thought it was her problem. In comparison to Lisa, who, be more Lisa, I think we both said, but who didn't have the answers. Her story was fantastic, and the journey she went on through her cancer diagnosis and how she prepared for that. She was going to the nurse, the doctor, the gynae with lists of questions, and if they didn't have the answers, she'd research them, and that was a theme throughout her episode. She challenged anything that and any answer she was given. She challenged that.
Do you know what else I think as well, when we look at information, is even if people are getting information, there's the inability to tell whether it's the correct information.
Yeah.
I can't have HRT because I have a family history of breast cancer. Like, no, that's wrong.
Yeah.
I can't have HRT because I have got a family history of blood clots. Like, absolutely, definitely still incorrect. And I think that there seemed to be just everyone's very insecure about what they know and whether it's true. And it's, what a confusing space to be in.
Yeah. And I think, going along that theme and thinking about Michael's episode, my brain always says, what's behind me making this decision? Is there someone making money out of it? Is there, we talk about supplements and all the crap that we're trying to be sold at the moment, and sold to based on our anxieties or what we think we might have. And Michael's episode was fascinating because she'd gone through the healthcare system in the US, had a really rough time of insurance and finding insurance through the workplace. But that one moment where she had all the information she needed was when she privately went to a sperm donating clinic.
Yeah.
And she said, I felt empowered at that moment. I could make choices based on all the information I had. And she had, we were fascinated. That episode was brilliant. One of my
Yeah,
favorites.
absolutely.
She was picking eye color and personality, and she could hear the sperm donor's voice, to even down to that last detail. And
Exactly.
it really struck me, well, it
And
is possible, isn't it?
but that, yeah. But then really the information that she had about her hysterectomy that she went on to have was relatively sparse. Why did you have it? Not quite sure. And were there any other options available? I don't fully know.
And to the
And
point where they said, shall we take the ovaries as well? It's like taking your car to the MOT. Well, we can send you a full set of new tyres if you want.
yeah,
Might be better.
yeah, yeah. I spoke to somebody this morning actually, who was inquiring about one of our appointments, and she said, "Well, I don't know whether I need a well woman check or a menopause consultation." And I said, "Well, how old are you?" She said 47, but I don't think it's menopause because I've had a hysterectomy. And that, that is the level of lack of knowledge
Yeah.
that is being passed on when people are having these kind of major organs taken out, that just absolutely nothing. And I think that podcasts like this in season one, we paid a lot of attention to information and trying to make sure that this is just another way that women can arm themselves with factually accurate, clinically up-to-date, evidence-based information.
Why do you think then? Why is it so hard to access? Is it that the information hasn't been there? Is it relatively new, or are we just putting our trust in the wrong places? Why is this information?
I think that is a very complicated answer, but I think there are a few things that kind of give an idea as to how we ended up in this situation. So I think the healthcare service is predominantly and historically patriarchal. So what I mean by that is actually, really there is very little research that is done on women. And, if you think up until the 80s, early 90s, there was no health research done on women, not one. So all pain relief, for example, was just tested on men. And I think if there's one thing that we've learned, and that's, this was 20 years ago, 30 years ago, if there's one thing that we've learned, it's that we're not small men. We're very biologically very different.
Yeah.
And so that's the healthcare system. And then we look at what's being taught. So actually what's being taught is not menopause. It's not specific to your hormones in any other way, apart from, endocrinology and then your sex hormones, like your estrogen, progesterone, testosterone are just these other hormones that act completely independently of everything else. And they just control whether you do or don't get pregnant, which is completely incorrect. We know better now. And, I think that the education system for medicine and for nursing, all aspects just hasn't caught up. And then I think you have the bias where I think, in a patriarchal healthcare system, quite often women are encouraged to downplay their symptoms. And I think that is the narrative we have. Your periods, well, they just hurt, is normal. Childbirth, well, it just hurts, and it's just normal. And I think that women tend to think, well, this is probably just normal, then I just get on with it. And I think it's created, this perfect storm where if you look 20, 30 years ago, even 20, Rosie, it was kind of irrelevant because I think most women just put, not being able to drive or not being able to make decisions or having achy knees and not being able to play sport and putting on weight, they put that down to age.
Yeah.
But now we have bigger and higher expectations for what 40 looks like and 50 and 60 and 70 and 80.
Yeah. And I guess, and to be quite honest, I think that goes for a lot of men as well in terms of aging and aging better. I think as a human race, we know a little bit more and we're more informed. I think biologically, women have a lot more to deal with and go through.
Well,
Just,
but I think there's a lot more barriers, mate. So, if me and my husband both went to the GP to ask for hormone replacement, so for him testosterone and for me estrogen and testosterone, I can guarantee you in 90% of healthcare facilities that the reception that we would get and the outcomes that we would get are entirely different. And that's because we associate virality with men. And,
yeah.
men are allowed to want to age better. But women, no, we're just vain.
Yeah. So
Mad.
case one, verdict. Get your information, get informed. And
Yeah. And advocate for
thankfully
yourself.
things are changing slowly, albeit, but they are changing. And I think that's been quite evident in the ladies we've spoken to. And I think podcasts like ours, and thankfully there's a lot out there now to encourage women and empower women to like you say, advocate for themselves.
Absolutely.
Case file 2 then. This has been another reoccurring theme. Are women just permanently exhausted? We said to each other as soon as we came on, everybody I speak to, when I walk the dog, I see certain people, I just feel shattered all the time. Looking back over some of the episodes, we had Katie with her moments of calm in the car, which was one of my favourite moments, where she just, take her moment of silence and calm before she picked the children up. We had Jodie, who had almost normalised her exhaustion. It was a thyroid problem, and thankfully she'd pushed and pushed for that diagnosis. But just going back to the point we just made, a common theme and a common symptom, and maybe put your clinical hat on now, is being tired. And I think a lot of us put that down to age.
That is my pet hate.
Right.
So I say that with love.
Still.
That is my pet hate, but I almost love it when people say it. Because if you are 40 or 50 or 60 and putting things down to age, I think you really need to question that. Have we just normalized becoming more tired, and have we normalized being lesser? Because that's not on my watch, mate. Absolutely not. No. And today I am tired. You're right, but that's because for all parents in Spain, the teachers are having a strike, which they should, and it's fabulous. But my kids are off school, and it's exhausting. But actually, generally, I really push against being tired. Actually, I'm busier.
Yeah.
And I think that what I try and do, and certainly in my clinic, is reframe that. And, if you're tired and you're over, 35, have your hormones got something to do with it? And what are you going to do about it? Because, do you need to change how you exercise or when you exercise? Do you need to change how you work? Do you need to change what you eat? Do you need to add some hormones? All of these things.
And would you say, for me, being tired is a physical sort of, I've done a lot today, sit down, cup of tea, end of the day type thing.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes I experience it, and you feel this sluggishness, and I think it's a different thing, and I think we can all lean into using an excuse and saying, oh, it's just my age, but I think they're a different thing, being tired and being sluggish and quite exhausted all the time. Because it's the end of the day, you've had a busy day, you've been running after children, you've been working, you've been to the gym, you've done all these things. Towards the end of the day, you're starting to feel a bit tired. That's fine. That's normal.
But also, tired isn't bad. Tired, that tired that you're talking about there, that's a great tired.
Yeah. I'm glad you said
bloody
that.
hell. I'm really busy.
I'm a bit sadistic with that because I have to earn my sleep, and
Yeah.
I like to have had, like, you know, when you go to the gym, you're like, oh, a good ache, you know.
Yeah,
I like to earn my bit of chocolate at night and my cup of tea and
absolutely.
my sit down, and that is it. Like you say, it's a good tired, and
Yeah,
you have to be ready for bed. But if
absolutely.
you're waking up sluggish
Yeah.
and
And I think that's it, isn't it?
drained, is it is there a difference? Is it recognised
100%.
the difference?
100%. So, and I think, commonly we would call that fatigue, where you're waking up and you're feeling not rested.
Mm,
And it gets to the afternoon and you just have to just sit down and close your eyes.
yeah.
That's not normal and that shouldn't be tolerated. And, it is that's your body's way of trying to tell you that something's not quite right. I think at whatever age you are at, and perhaps not as we push on into our 80s, but certainly anything before that, I think I always say to my patients, it's entirely reasonable that you should be able to complete the things that you want to complete. And whether that be a full day at work, whether that be a full day at work and going to the gym, whether that be 2 social things a week,
Yeah.
absolutely, you should continue being able to complete those. And if you feel that you can't do that comfortably, then why?
Mm.
Why? Because it's certainly not because you're 30, 45, or 57. That's not your reason. Look a bit further.
So verdict: being exhausted isn't just being older.
No, Christ, no.
Case file 3 then, Katie, one of our faves. Is it perimenopause, or do I just hate everybody?
I think I think there's a bit of both there, isn't there? Because sometimes I think, God, I'm on enough HRT to sink a ship. But sometimes people just piss me off.
Oh, sure.
And I know that it's not their fault at all.
No,
But I've just got no interest. And I do think that I think we spoke a lot about it, didn't we? That
we had a whole
is it
episode on it, didn't we, with
you're right,
Katie?
we
Yeah, yeah.
did. And but is it a good thing or is it a bad thing? And I think sometimes it is a good thing because your tolerance for rubbish
Oh, for sure.
reduces.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
and even going to Melissa, who was saying that she's got a social battery now and it runs out quickly, so she
For
has to
sure.
be wise
Mm.
about who she spends that social battery on. And I feel very much the same.
Yeah.
And I think before I would be out and about until the early hours, and now if it's past 10 o'clock I am absolutely not interested.
So do you think menopause kind of removes your filter of people, or does it kind of just reveal what you've been putting up with and you just think, yeah, done with that? What do you think, it's a symptom of menopause, or do you think it's just getting older?
I think it's an outcome of knowing yourself better. So I think that when you're perimenopausal and your hormones start to change, you have no choice but to become more in tune with your body. This makes me feel good. This makes me feel tired. They piss me off. That person makes me happy. I don't like that color. That noise is very annoying. And I think all of these things you have no choice but to confront every day. And I think that an outcome of that or a product of that is that you're like, no, it's probably not wise that I go, for a drink with that person that grates on me because, I feel like I might not be hormonally optimized today.
That's a great way to put it. I like that. Very diplomatic, Katie.
Thank you, darling.
Verdict then. I think we should say maybe the jury remains out on that one. Is it perimenopause, or do I just hate everyone? Depends on the day
Bit of
and the
both.
person. Case file 4 then. I quite like this one. The Invisible Woman. And this is mainly about women not being heard, and why they spend so much time trying to convince people that they're struggling. So I'm thinking about Jodie's episode and her thyroid diagnosis. And when she went to the doctors, she'd had the diagnosis of thyroid, still didn't feel quite right, was asked questions about her weight. And I think the nurse said to her, well, you don't want to end up being one of those old women, do you? She felt quite ridiculed in that moment. And Taz, throughout her whole episode, didn't feel heard.
Hugely. I think, but I think, if you look at the lifespan of a woman, I think that's pretty evident from beginning to end, right? If you look at everything that's coming out about endometriosis now, and poor women that suffer from endometriosis and for years have had to fight, to say, actually, I have to take to my bed every month for 4 days and I faint from the pain. And women with PCOS that say, I just don't feel right, and something's not, it's not normal. And I think, women in childbirth that, sadly, and with all of the stuff that, the investigations in the UK with maternity departments, I think as women, I don't know why we have to fight harder than men, but we do. Yeah. And I think we're not asking for, and I'll get down off of my feminist box, but I do think that this is where, when we look at equity, is just making sure that we know as women that our bodies are different. And at the moment, we do have to fight to be heard. And that's rubbish. But, it's a bit like, I had a chat with my kids the other day.
Not for fashion advice this time.
but I'm going to go, slightly off-piste here, but I'll bring it back. So, I was talking to my children about, what would you do if somebody touched you inappropriately and mummy and daddy weren't there? What would you do? And they said, well, I don't know. I said, well, you tell an adult. And they said, yeah. I'd tell an adult. I'd tell someone. And I said, brilliant. But what would you do if that adult didn't believe you? And they said, well, I don't know. And I said, well, then you tell another adult, and you'd keep telling adults until someone believed you. And for me, that was really important to kind of give them that power. And I feel very similar in my job. And I suppose that's what this podcast is about, and what, all of the outreach work and all of the campaigning that we do is, if you're trying to tell somebody that you feel rubbish and you think that it's because of your hormones, and actually you've tried everything else and this isn't working, and they don't believe you, what are you going to do? Well, you're going to keep telling someone until somebody helps you. And that's really important. And, is it fair? No. But, get on with it. Let's do it, because it's fundamental that you don't spend the next 10, 15 years feeling rubbish while all of these golden opportunities to shape your life pass you by.
And thankfully, that's how we've got to where we are today. But I would say there'll be a lot of ladies that just thought, oh, well, that's me then. I'll get back in my little box and suffer. So yes, verdict is, if at first you don't succeed, try again. All right, case file 8 then, our final one. I think throughout the episodes we've got quite mad about the amount of shit that we are sold, or they try to sell us. But I suppose my point is, at what point did menopause become a marketing opportunity?
People are always going to make money out of, other people's misery. It's just how it goes. Yeah. And that's not really my problem. What my problem is it's in the absence of decent information. Yeah. And so, really, I am, faced with women, oh God, all the time, that will say, oh, I'm going to do it the natural way. And then you say, okay. And they reel off the 485 supplements that they've tried over the last 5 years. And, the Reiki that they've been to, and the, kinesiology, and the acupuncture, and the hypnotherapy, and the therapy, and the supplements, and, all of these things. And this isn't me being dismissive of all of those things, because actually there's some of them that are brilliant. But why are you doing it? Because if you're doing all of these things to try and treat your symptoms, you're probably not going to get very far. And you may do, but that's not going to be the true for every woman. And actually, if you're doing all of these things because they make you feel good and you want to support your hormones, then go for it. And I think it's just knowing realistically what is going to help me and what's it going to do and what can I expect from it. And then, do I want to spend my money on it? Because actually, exactly.
Yeah.
If somebody's saying, there's a supplement, it may or may not help you, then, you can decide whether you do or don't spend €55 on it.
I think we've always said, get the basics nailed, get that foundation of getting your hormones balanced, seeing an expert, a medical expert, getting the basics done. And then anything you do on top of that is a bonus, whether you want to spend £2, £20 or £200. If it makes you feel good, no one's stopping you. But there are basics. They're basic boxes to tick before you do all that, I think is what we're saying.
Exactly. And, I think that anyone that's listened or anyone that knows anything that I talk about, I'm very, very, very pro HRT. But that doesn't mean that I, am dogmatic about everybody taking it. I'm dogmatic about choice. I think that we should have a choice, but you could only make a choice if you have the information. I feel very similarly about, all of the extras that are out there. And I think, if you don't want to take HRT, that's fine. But make sure that your reasons for not taking it are correct.
Yeah.
Because I would say, controversially and anecdotally, in 90% of cases, they're not. And I think what happens then to those women is you have a myriad of symptoms that you're just going to spend the next 10 or 15 years trying to correct with weird and wonderful supplements.
Spending lots of money going round in circles.
Yeah. And maybe not. I also do meet in my personal life and professional life, I meet women who have absolutely nailed it for, by the grace of God, if you like, she says, as a non-religious person. But, by some fluke, they have ended up with this genetic code that means that they do a bit of yoga and a bit of Pilates and give up drinking and they feel fabulous. And good for you. That is absolutely amazing. But it certainly should not be a benchmark by which we are all measured.
No. Season 2 on the way then. Got some cracking guests lined up.
Yes.
Thank you for your time today. Lovely to see you as always.
Oh, and you, my love.
This episode of Fannying Around is supported by Clear Boost, a women's health supplement range I created after years of working in clinic and seeing how confused and overwhelmed women felt by supplements. Each product is designed to support the symptoms that I see most often: hormone changes, low energy, poor sleep, low mood, and stress, using ingredients chosen for their specific roles in hormone regulation, energy production, and nervous system support. The idea was to replace long random supplement lists with a small number of targeted formulas so women know what they're taking and why. Find out more at clearboost.eu.
Fannying Around was brought to you by Everything's Rosie, presented by me, Rosie Frost, and Katie Pitt-Allen, and sponsored by Clear Boost Supplements and the Women's Health Clinic Europe.